Welcome to Attenuation, a weekly podcast where two friends come together to drink beer, discuss beer styles and trends, and just generally ruminate on the meaning of life, aka beer. If you enjoy your time with us, we invite you to become a weekly listener and subscribe to the podcast. Without further ado, here is this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to episode 25 of Attenuation, a beer podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
Hello.
How's it going today, Steven?
Awesome.
Are you excited?
I'm so excited.
Did you do a lot of homework?
I've been reading like every day.
Nice.
Yep.
Well, because today we're doing a deep dive into Gose, which is Steven's absolutely favorite style of beer.
Also, it's the best style of beer. Not just my favorite. It's just a fact that is the best style of beer.
That's your opinion, sir. The best style of beer
It's a fact.
is stout.
Facts.
All right. Well, before we get into arguing what's the best style of beer, we are going to drink some beer.
Mm-hmm.
I think we both came prepared. I will introduce my beer and give some nose notes before I hand it over to Steven. But I'm drinking Goses are red. So this is a Gose style ale with Syrah grapes that's been aged in oak. And this is from the Bruery. And it's 5.6%.
You know, I never knew, well, I didn't know this. I just learned that the name of that brewery, the Bruery, it's Bruery, right?
Yeah, they spell it funny.
Yeah, do you know why?
Is it like, no, I don't know.
Because it's the Rue family is the founders of the brewery. R-U-E.
Oh,
yeah,
all right.
So they
That's
put
really
it into
cute.
brewery. Yeah,
That's clever.
just a little trivia knowledge there for you. Ooh, I like
So
that
look at
color.
that. It's coming in camera. It looks way more red than it actually is. It looks like
Yeah, like a pink champagne.
it looks like a pink champagne in reality over here. It's very clear, and there's almost no carbonation. Like, there's little tiny champagne bubbles, but it's not really gathering any head. Ooh, it smells grapey, and you definitely get the salinity and spiciness. I'm excited. I'm going to dive into this one while you introduce yours.
Okay, cool. Enjoy. All right, so I am drinking watermelon Tajin Gose from Owl Farm Brewing.
Tajin? That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Oh, it's in Vista, California. I was trying to find where it was from. Yeah. We'll talk about this a little bit more in length, but Gose is a salty beer. Usually salt is added to the beer. Instead of that, they use the Tajin, which is kind of a spicy, salty spice.
I love Tajin.
They put on Mexican, they put on fruit.
On pineapple or mango. Oh, it's so good.
So this is watermelon Tajin Gose. I love watermelon as a Gose adjunct. It's one of my favorites.
What a clever idea. I hope this is good, because I really like this idea.
It could go
It's one of those things that's
two ways.
Gonna be, yeah, exactly.
I kind of I sort of have that feeling about watermelon Goses in general, or just Goses in general. Sometimes it's just okay, so this is pouring kind of a similar color to yours, sort of a pink Jolly Rancher watermelon color, sort of a light pink, light red. Very classic Gose carbonation, so very, very active carbonation, but no head, so just very, very, very bubbly. It's interesting with a wheat beer, you tend to have more of a retaining head because of the wheat, but in the Gose, because of the sour and the pH and the lactic acid fermentation, it tends to counteract that wheat head.
Okay, that's interesting, because I didn't know that. I knew that a wheat beer will usually have a head that's sustains itself.
Yeah,
I don't know a better way to describe it, but this is a wheat beer that's not doing that.
Exactly. So on the nose, I get that sort of lemony tartness. Definitely some melon. Maybe just a really, really, really slight hop bitterness. Not a lot, but kind of a floral, melony hop smell too. But yeah, not a lot of the Tajin spice isn't really coming through in the nose, but we'll see how it tastes.
All right, so Goses Are Red is really good. I would definitely drink this again. It has a really like a drying, the whole kind of beer. It gives that drying effect, like kind of dries out your mouth. But in the entrance, it's like very sour, and then you get like sweet red berries and salt, kind of like enter next. And then on the finish, it's like grape, like red wine grapes, oak, and then more salt, and then it just like completely dries your mouth out. Like my mouth feels so dry right now. So it's really good overall. Because I feel like it reads Gose, but it's like very fruity, and then it kind of has that barrel aged aspect, but it's not like overly done. Yeah, it's just like it's almost like a super Gose, maybe. I don't know.
A very modern interpretation.
Exactly. Like they've turned things up to 11. Like, but I mean I really like that. But yeah, so definitely thumbs up. I would drink this again.
Cool.
How is your Tajin beer?
Yeah, I'm having an interesting time with this one. No, I mean it's good. Kind of has this like the Tajin spiciness is like very early on, like right as you drink it, and then it kind of mellows out into almost more of like a melony hop profile. But then it kind of moves into more of this classic watermelon syrup flavor. Not super sweet, and it's not tart at all. I would call this very barely sour on my sour scale. But then there's this sort of underlying floral coriander flavor as well that kind of finishes with a very dry finish as well. So, as far for watermelon, a watermelon beer, not even just watermelon goes, but a watermelon beer in general, it's pretty good. It's very drinkable, complex, and it's interesting enough, because you can sit with it and be like, oh, these flavors are kind of cool the way they play together. I would have liked saltier and a little more sour,
which are two like critical components of a Gose, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, I will say like the nose of this was definitely Gose. I think they got the coriander, that sort of like lemony aroma that comes with that. I think the watermelon meshed well with the into the beer. I just think, like I said, they left the salt out and substituted with Tajin.
Yeah.
And so that just like didn't quite work in terms of still feeling like it was kind of a salty beer. And then I think just the sour, I don't know what their sour process is or what they were, like every brewer's tolerance for sour and where they want their sour beer to come out as is completely different. So
yeah,
you just never know. But yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely executed well. I think it was kind of I'm sure it was a fun beer for them to brew, and it's a fun beer to try. I'd highly doubt I would ever try it again.
Okay, so it sounds like if it was a little bit saltier and a little bit more sour, you'd really like it though.
Yeah,
yeah,
because they nailed the watermelon flavor very well. Even I don't know if they used maybe like an Eldorado hop or something like Melanie hop that seemed to give it a nice like underkick of like hop bitterness with the melon profile.
Yeah. Sounds like not a thumbs up then.
Yeah. I mean, it's more of a middle, hanging out in the middle.
It's a thumb sideways?
Yeah.
All right, one thumbs up, one thumb sideways today.
Fun to drink just one time.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's been like the last 4 or 5 things I've drank. So.
It's like every beer I drink, basically. Like, I just wanted to try it and see if this was even remotely good. You know what? What I drank yesterday? I'll post this on Instagram in a couple days, but it was an Evil Twin root beer sour.
Oh, no.
It was a sour ale brewed with root beer syrup.
That sounds horrible. Was it good?
It was terrible. Well, I don't know. I guess, yeah. I got like maybe 4 sips in, and then I was like, okay, I'm good. Like, yeah. I'd probably just rather have a root beer.
Right? Yeah, sometimes I think they push it too far with the creativity.
Yep. I still have a cola one in my fridge as well, so.
Oh, I'm going to go ahead and predict that's going to be revolting as well.
Judging now from the root beer when it's definitely headed in that direction. I just
don't know. Root beer and cola and beer don't seem like they should mix. Have you had the alcoholic Mountain Dew yet?
No.
Not me either. I haven't even seen it. If I see it, I'll buy it.
Okay.
I won't drink one.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
Yeah. All right, so that was drinking beer. Next, we have some beer news. We're going to talk about some of the people that won was it the Brewers Cup in California?
Yes, the California Craft Brewers Cup was last week. Again, this is just a beer competition, not a festival or anything. So it's kind of cool, just going through the list of winners and seeing some of the names that were familiar. California is a very big state, and there's a lot of breweries. So there's quite a few that I had never heard of before that won. So anyway, congratulations to them. But I did want to mention a few breweries that I have heard of and that did very well. Actually, this is from Jason's stomping grounds, Super Owl Brewing, which is from Davis, California.
Really? They won something?
They got third place in the Belgian Strong Ale category.
Wow, that's impressive.
So maybe there were only 3 entries. I don't know.
So,
But
like Super Owl. It's a really cute place. I went there like when they first opened, so I don't think it's a fair assessment. But I wasn't blown away.
I mean, they're very small. They're very new.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too, is like I give a lot of leeway to a newer brewery because even if you have some like really good recipes, like scaling them up like that, it takes a really long time to dial them back in. So I do need to get out there and try them again because the people that I don't know if I met the owner, but they were really awesome. Like, and it has a really cool like aesthetic and vibe. So I'm glad they won something. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very exciting for them. Knee Deep Brewing. You may have seen Breaking Bad. Was it Breaking Bad IPA or what's it?
Did they do Breaking Bud?
Breaking Bud, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I know it's not actually Breaking Bad, but I couldn't remember the pun they made. Yeah, Breaking Bud IPA. But anyway, they're Simtra, which is another one you'll see. Have you ever had Simtra?
I have not.
Anyway, that one for American Imperial IPA. They won gold for that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I always liked Breaking Bud. They supposedly got sued for the imagery on the can and stuff. I don't know.
I was gonna say I don't know if you knew that, but I think they got like a cease and desist.
Really?
Yeah, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like,
so are they using different can art now? Or?
I want to say it's the same, so maybe they resolved it.
Yeah, maybe.
But it's like, dude, if you're doing an homage to something you like, it's basically free advertising for your show. So maybe just chill.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I always thought that was funny. But so the other one, New Glory, which is in Sacramento. One day when if you ever return to going into work for real.
Yeah, I know.
You should pick some New Glory beer because it's like right out there.
Yes, New Glory is close to where I work. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it's one of those weird ones where you're like in the middle of this like strange industrial park and you're
yeah, I've been there. Mm-hmm.
Like, is there a brewery here? and then there is randomly. But yeah, so their Ubadank American IPA got second place in that category. And their Gose, their key lime Gose, which is fantastic. In fact, I think I even posted on Instagram. I drank it a little while back. I was able to get some from Craft Shack. It's so good. So good. So congratulations to New Glory for getting 2 second place awards there in the IPA and Gose categories. Alaro. Have you been to Alaro?
No.
It's in downtown Sac.
Oh, okay.
Their Castillo IPA, I feel like, has won tons of awards in the past as well. In fact, I think it won gold at the Great American Beer Festival the last time we went. But anyway, they won gold for their English style IPA Castillo. So
that's cool.
But yeah, so those are. Oh, and they also won second place for their stout, Maria.
Oh, now I want to try that.
Yeah, I think you should check out Alaro. And that's about it. That's it's pretty cool though that some Sacramento, Davis area breweries won. Super Owl actually got on there for their sweet stout as well, called Nerd Out. They got a third place award.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to get back over to Super Owl.
Yeah, maybe they're doing good stuff now.
Yeah, sounds like it.
The only other name I really recognized was Mike Hess Brewing, which is one of my favorite San Diego brewers. Mm-hmm. They make one of my all-time favorite Berliner Weiss beers called My Other Weiss. They got third place for their Imperial Stout called Umbrix. So pretty cool. It's cool that they're still doing these competitions.
Yeah. No, it's a great way to discover stuff. It sounds like some are really close to me. So
yeah, always cool to check out some of these lists and see like, hey, I never heard of that. There was Humble Sea, I think. They won first place in the Gose category. Be interesting to kind of like search out for those beers and see if I can find something from them. So there's our beer news for this week.
Very cool.
Some of the breweries in California that are doing it right. Making some good beers.
Nice. All right. Are you ready for the main topic, sir?
I guess I'm as ready as I could ever be.
A deep dive into Gose.
You feel somewhat inadequate, but
nah, you're gonna do great, I'm sure. I did a lot of research too, so I can supplement your efforts.
Cool. So it's kind of interesting. Like I've said many times, Gose is my favorite style of beer. That came early on from drinking them, and but the love kind of grew as I learned more of the history, and some of the themes are similar to other styles of beer that we've done deep dives on, right? Where like the beer sort of dies out and has to be revived by like one person who loves that style. That's actually happened multiple times with Gose.
Yeah, I don't know how we still have Gose after researching the history.
It's crazy. And really, you kind of have to split it into like sort of three eras of Gose, because really this is a 1,000-year-old beer style. There's record of it being brewed around the 11th century, and then you kind of have that like you have another era of Gose that kind of goes from like 1500 to like 1750, and then you have that. And then you have like a third era of Gose, which is like 1750 to the present. So they're kind of overlapping, like geographically and time, like when one dies out and when one is like starting to get popular in like a different area. But overall, there's sort of three different eras of Gose, and probably three different taste profiles, honestly, somewhat. It's hard to say what the very original Gose was, but at the time, in the 11th century, probably almost every beer being brewed at this time is either sour or much stronger. So a higher alcohol beer doesn't sour because those bacterial and yeast agents can't work in that higher alcohol environment, so they don't sour.
Right.
But anything lighter than that, all this stuff is like wild fermented. I mean,
yeah.
Honestly, the first Gose there was probably no yeast pitched at all, like for a long time. So beers brewed in this time period, and they weren't using hops; they were using a thing called gruit. So it's just very early beer making days, and so again, it would be hard to know for sure what this beer tasted like, but this beer, we'll do a little intro to it. It's Gose. It's spelled Gose, but pronounced Gose. Not to be confused with Goose, which we've talked about in the lambic episode, is a blend of different lambics.
Right.
So totally different style, not even related. Goose is a Flemish word from Belgium. This is Gose. It is named from the city of Goslar and the Gose River that flows through Goslar. So that's where the name comes from. Goslar is a small mining town. It's at the base of the Harz Mountains in Ramelsburg. The area was discovered that there was silver deposits in the mountains, so it quickly became a very popular mining town.
Little silver rush.
Yep. So there was a silver rush to that area. It was a huge trading spot, and became a respite place for kings and politicians. There was a huge palace built in Goslar in the 11th century, 12th century. This was a very popular place, and the Gose beer, there's very few records of this beer at the time, so really, it's just every once in a while they would find writings of someone like Otto the Great wrote something about like this wonderful Gose beer from Goslar, and this was like in the 11th century. So you have like, writings from like 1181 and another one from 1239 and another one from like 1332. Just random mentions of this
like aside. So, I had this amazing beer. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there's just not a lot of like writing at this time. Not a lot of like people that are literate, even wealthier people. So there's just sometimes the records just weren't that good. But it was interesting to like every once in a while have a reference to this Gose beer pop up.
So this is like the first era of Gose. It's almost kind of lost to time and the lack of records.
Exactly. But because of these like such early records and references to this beer, it's considered to be one of the earliest distinct styles of beer, which is pretty cool.
Okay, that is really cool.
So what's really interesting is this beer became so popular that in the 14th century, it was the most imported beer exported out of Goslar and imported to other parts of Germany, and even Hamburg, Germany, like created tax laws against exported beer or imported beer into Hamburg because Gose was so popular, and it was like the most imported beer into Hamburg. So the problem with mining towns is that when the resource dries up, so do the city.
Yeah, the town goes.
And so that's kind of what happened with Goslar. It just sort of became lost to history. The little town still exists, but it's very much a shell of what it used to be, because there's just no silver mining there anymore, and it didn't be, it lost its status. But there were so many surrounding cities that started brewing this Gose beer that it still kind of lived on. The most important being Leipzig, Germany, which is about 90 miles east of Goslar. This is kind of the second era of Gose, is the Leipzig Gose. Okay. Probably the most like what we are drinking now. A salty beer with coriander, mildly hopped, low alcohol, highly carbonated. So this Leipzig era blows up like crazy. It is a super popular beer. I mean, these like kings, queens, politicians, everyone on the road to, and Leipzig was kind of on the road, like it's a prominent town on the trade roads, and people traveled from all over to get this Leipzig Gose beer. There were a lot of rules about like each tavern had like certain beers that they could serve and certain beers they couldn't serve.
Okay.
And at one point, like Prince Leopold of Prussia, he had a soldier that served under him who he became very good friends with. He was a great soldier, and Prince Leopold had him serve as his like personal valet after the war because he just loved this guy so much. And then when he left that service, this guy and his wife went and they opened a tavern north of Leipzig. So Prince Leopold goes to visit his friend in this tavern, and he's expecting to drink some like good beer, and he drinks this beer and he's like, "This is horrible. Spit it out." And he's like, "Why didn't you have the Leipzig Gose?" And the friend's like, "I can't. Like, we're not allowed to serve that here." So Prince Leopold ended up putting a lot of political pressure on the city council to change the rules for his friend.
Wow.
And it became one of the most visited taverns to get this Gose beer, just thanks to Prince Leopold.
He used to have friends in high places.
Yeah, right? There's a great poem from that era written about the Leipzig Gose, and it is, "Many have died, but Utrecht's army is not ruined yet. New sprouts come endlessly every year continuously, who can take in the soothing Gose beer."
Wow.
It was very popular.
Apparently, before I told us about it.
So the problem with beer style journeys, is what we've noticed, is that war takes a huge toll on beer styles,
Yes.
certain beer styles. And that's kind of what happened with the Leipzig Gose, is that the Napoleonic Wars in that area just took a toll on everything, breweries
This wouldn't be the
included.
first time the Gose is affected by war.
Exactly.
I guess that's the downside of being 1,000 years old. You had to see a lot of wars.
Yep, exactly. Especially in Central Europe.
Yeah.
It's kind of a theme of Central Europe. Because even like in the 30 Years' War, same thing, like French took over a lot of that area, and they were wine drinkers. So a lot of breweries got shut down or turned into wineries, and they, French were not going to drink Gose beer. So, stuff like that. These are sort of some of the rises and falls. And again, like these time periods kind of sort of overlap, and things happen, like things don't happen in a vacuum. But it's just a sort of continuous rise and fall of popularity. Certainly the biggest popularity would be Leipzig, Germany in the 1800s. It's definitely when it's was most popular. In 1824, there was a merchant named Johann Gadecki. He acquired this large estate at the end of Napoleon's German occupation, and he was very much interested in brewing a Gose on his estate. So he was able to pull this other brewer from a more well-known brewery. His name was Johann Liedermann. He was able to convince him to come with him and start brewing this Gose, because he had tried on his own and it wasn't very successful. So he brought this guy in to help him save the Gose. Well, they started brewing the beer on the manor, and it was like completely in-house. So all the grain they used was what they grew. All the coal they used for the fire is coal they mined. All the ingredients to the beer was grown on the estate. So it ended up becoming known as the Dolnitz, the Dolnitz Manor. It became known as the Manor House Dolnitz Gose. So
okay.
It was its own style of Gose, and it was extremely popular. They ended up serving that beer at the you could find that at the tavern of that guy's, Prince Leopold's friend, and it was the market leader, Gose. The other funny thing, way ahead of their time, they limited production on purpose.
Oh, yeah. To drive up the desirability. Yeah.
Yeah.
Real trendsetters.
Right. So all you beer snobs who get upset about Pliny the Younger being only brewed once a year and they could brew it all the time, blah, blah, blah. This is not new, okay?
Yeah.
Brewers long ago knew how to manipulate demand for their beer. So.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah. So this
is about the time too, and you did a little bit of research on the long neck bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So if it wasn't in a barrel, which a lot of it was, they also bottled some of it in a strange way.
Is this what we talked about?
Yeah.
This is so weird and so cool, but it grosses me out too.
Do you want to talk about how they corked the bottle?
Yeah. Quote, so they would pour the ones they bottled. They would have these traditional bottles where the bottom is really big, like a bulb almost, but flat, and then it has a really long neck, and they would put the Gose in, but they wouldn't put any cap or cork or anything to seal it. But during the secondary fermentation, the yeast would end up going up the neck of the bottle and making a natural seal. So I don't know. That's just, I know when I drink beer, I'm drinking a lot of yeast byproducts, and that's a little bit too much of a realistic reminder. If I have to peel this plug of yeast out to drink my beer, I don't know about that.
It's pretty awesome.
But it's actually it's an ingenious way to like seal the beer at like just the right time, and then you don't have to worry about putting a cork in it. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
They don't still do
Awesome.
that, do they? No.
Not like anything you would ever see now.
It would not be convenient to drink out of.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't even know how you like break that SCOBY seal, right?
Right.
I don't know. The mysteries.
Mysteries of time.
Yeah, so the next sort of fall of Gose was really the early 1900s. You had First World War in Germany. Again, war affecting beer styles. Even sort of leading up to that, you had this trend towards Pilsners, stuff that was easier to store for a long time, which lagers were.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of had this sort of change in beer taste towards the lagers and Pilsners.
Okay.
There's actually, people got so used to drinking that, and they would come to drink the Gose, and they would actually, they'd ask, like, is this drinkable? When they drank it.
Because they thought it was bad?
Yep. Actually, one of the taverns that served Gose, they were named Ohne Bedekin, which means without concern. And that was always his response to, is this drinkable? And his response would be, without concern.
That's amazing.
Although, there was also a theme. So drinking wheat beers, highly wheated beers with live yeast was becoming uncommon for these people. They were used to lagers with no wheat in them. So lots of times people would get upset tummies from, I said tummies, like I must be father of two young children.
You have two young children.
Upset stomachs.
Is that celiacs or?
What's that?
Was it celiacs or is this like a?
No, just like
okay.
like wheat intolerance, like not just like not being used to drinking live yeast wheat beers.
Okay.
So there was this like joke about Gose causing like diarrhea.
Oh no, that's not good for the brand.
Yeah. Here's another poem. There's lots of poems written about Goses. It's a very romantic, has a romantic history. This is the Ode to Gose from 1856. A beer brewed in Leipzig, which they call Gose, goes to your head at times, and sometimes in your pants.
That's the whole poem. Goes to your head.
That's the Ode to Gose.
Sometimes your pants.
Sometimes in your pants. Yeah.
Wow. That's very interesting.
Oh. If there ever was a endorsement of Gose,
that's not a shining or ringing endorsement. It's like, hey, 50-50, you're gonna feel good. Yeah, you might have to use the restroom.
But this was the sign of the weakening of the human gut. Couldn't even handle a little sour wheat beer. All they could handle was their weak Pilsner.
So what year are we about at? So
we're in like the 1920s.
Okay.
Where Gose is sort of falling
like waning
out.
in popularity. Yeah.
Yeah. Any like historical distinct beer style is basically going away just because the war was so hard on like these small breweries.
Yeah, I read like in World War II the German government like nationalized a lot of the breweries and just to have them produced for the war, and they didn't want fancy beer.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Or difficult beer styles.
Right, or like a difficult, they didn't want to deal with the what's the the yeast plug called?
Yeah. SCOBY. Yeah, I mean, even with this, like the Ohne Bedekin brewery or tavern, I should say, they served Gose until 1958.
Okay.
They didn't make it past 1958.
Wait, is this our first or second? This is our second hero of Gose. I think there's like 3 or 4 individuals that saved Gose, but this is right around the time when Frederick Wurzler.
Okay, you'll have to talk about that. I didn't see that name come up.
Oh, okay. So this is like, I was waiting till we get about to this point, but I guess Frederick Wurzler had worked at the Dolnitz Brewery and knew the techniques for brewing Gose.
Okay.
So before he dies, he passes the recipe to his stepson, Guido Fissner. And then he was brewing Gose in a super small private brewery, even though there was like almost no demand. But like for a little while, he was like holding the torch of the Gose style, which is crazy. Because this happened like 3 or 4 times. And then and then the next thing I researched, and maybe this is where you're going next, but in the 80s, Lothar Goldhahn stepped in.
Yes,
and again saved the style.
Yeah, and I am seeing now. I missed that Wurzler name, but I'm seeing that now. Yeah, him and his stepson.
They're kind of crazy.
And then,
it's crazy just to think about them making something that's not popular for, I don't know, what is that, 20 or 30 years? And now, like, think of Gose now. It's everywhere. But, like, it's so, in a little twist of fate, it could be gone. It could be lost. So, it's just kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Wurzler Brewery closed in 1966 because Guido died of a heart attack randomly while gardening, and it just like, there just weren't that many people who knew how to brew Gose. Yeah. There were only like a handful of pubs even that wanted to serve it. Like,
it's insane.
Like a style, like a historical style of beer that was like literally the height, like the most demanded beer for like hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. It hangs like in the balance of just like 1 or 2 people.
It's crazy.
Like,
and we found this in like every single deep dive we've done.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of survivorhood bias. It's like there's probably like
how many beer styles
died out. Yeah, because there wasn't the one person that carried it on. So like, but it's fascinating just how many styles fell down to like almost one place making it, or one person, or one brewery, and then now with like the craft beer revolution, I feel like everything is safe again. So because everyone's making Gose, but it was a close shave like many times.
Yeah. So you mentioned Lothar Goldhahn, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he again very single-handedly saved Gose, because that would have been the end of the Gose story without him. And he became obsessed with restoring the One Tavern back to its original.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So he like found everything he possibly could, signs, advertisements, writings, anything he could find that mentioned Gose, so like to decorate the tavern. He bought it back. Actually, it become a community facility, and then it became like an X-ray,
so random.
like medical building, and then closed down. So he was able to like buy it, bring it back to life, and in 1986 they reopened the One Tavern. This is crazy to me that, what is this, like 30 years later? 30 years later, this guy's like obsessed with this style of beer, and he's like, I want to bring back this tavern. It's freaking amazing.
It's pretty cool. Could you imagine being so interesting? I'm so boring compared to this guy. Like, I just want to drink a beer and eat a good meal and watch a movie with my wife, and this guy's like, I will revive Gose in its original building.
Yeah. So he actually, he's hell-bent on brewing it in Leipzig. He thinks that there's no other place it should be brewed. But he's having a hard time because he's reopening this tavern, but he needs someone to brew the beer. And no one even wants to touch it. He finally finds a Berliner Weiss brewery out a little bit outside of town that decides to take it on. This is kind of a cool like overlap of two styles, two of my favorite styles. The Berliner Weiss is a low ABV tart German wheat ale, but more of a basic ale, whereas the Gose adds the salt and the coriander, and it's a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
These are two very similar styles, especially as like now they've evolved into sort of being base sour ales for like heavy fruit additions, and the modern style has taken these beers and used them as basis for lots of weird things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool that this Berliner Weiss brewery was like, yeah, we'll do it. So they brewed the Gose. They brewed it until 1988. Then they decided that they didn't want to do it anymore. They wanted to focus on their Berliner Weiss because there was an upcoming celebration of it was like a 750th anniversary of the city of Berlin. So they had to get ready for that with their Berlin style Weiss. So they stopped brewing the Gose. They had to. They ended up for a while continuing to buy the Berliner Weiss from this brewery, and then they would add coriander and salt to it.
Oh my god!
To try and mimic a Gose. Like, it wasn't exactly real. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but it was, better than nothing. And then, fortunately, in 1990, you had an even bigger explosion of people being able to visit these taverns because the Communist Party fell.
Oh, okay.
And now, just businesses open, and people are more free to travel and spend money, and the tavern, it's almost impossible to get a seat.
Wow. It's very popular again.
But it does almost die out again, mostly because they're having such a hard time trying to find someone to brew this beer and continue to brew it. So Thomas Schneider is another name in our Gose saviors.
Yes.
Thomas Schneider in 1999 uses his brewery to start. He actually turns a train station in Leipzig, Germany, into a Gose brewery. So he had another brewery, and then he opened this new one in Leipzig to brew Gose. So he kind of took that mantle and said, I'm going to save it.
Another very interesting person.
Exactly. And then this is where the timeline gets interesting, because in the late 90s, early 2000s is when you start to hear about this beer outside of Germany.
Okay.
A few people, you have the craft beer revolution now in the United States heating up. It's still very IPA heavy, but there was also this movement towards finding other stuff, not just the next new hop, but something else, and different strange styles and historical styles. Still, as popular as Gose was, and as long of a history as it had, it was still very, very unknown. There's a man named Michael Jackson. He's a huge beer historian in the United States.
Influential too.
Yeah. He didn't even mention it in any of his writings in his book. He didn't even mention it in his original book. He had an original book of beer history, beer styles and stuff. He didn't even mention Gose.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. It wasn't until 2004, I think, it shows up. I think there had been a few presentations on Gose in different brewery homebrew conventions and stuff. It had been mentioned. This is late 90s, early 2000s. But so many people kind of heard of sour wheat ale with salt and coriander, and they were like, okay, that's never going to be popular. So really, into late 2000, 2010, Gose is still very much unknown in the beer industry. I think in 2008, there were 9 Goses. 5 of those were in Germany, 4 in the United States. 9.
That's really crazy.
In 2008. That's not that long ago.
No.
In 2012, Westbrook Brewing, which I think is somewhere in the East Coast, they decided to try to brew a Leipzig Gose, and it became the first really popular American brewed Leipzig Gose. Was Westbrook's. I've had that one actually.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty good. So that's and then it just sort of blew up from there. I mean, you started to see them brewed more frequently, especially as the sour beer revolution started, which was kind of 2010, early 2010s. That started to really explode Not like anything like it is now. I mean, 10 years later now, it's like it's hard to go into. It'd be weird to go into a brewery and not have one sour on
I
tap.
was gonna say I didn't realize this is so recent. Like, I guess it makes sense what you're saying. 2008, I would have been in like just out of college. I don't remember Gose anywhere. But if you put in Gose and Beer Advocate right now, there's 4,141 ranked Goses. So that happened in like the last 13 years. That's insane.
Yeah, that's a huge
Yeah.
change. Huge,
Proliferation of the
change.
style. Yeah. So yeah, I guess there really was something about it. Maybe that's why everyone wrote those poems.
I mean, it's a great style of beer.
Wait, did you say it's the greatest?
My opinion is that it's the greatest.
All right, fair enough.
I mean, I did read an article one time. The article was titled "Craft Beer is Dead," and the whole article was the reporter reporting that like she drank a Gose and it was horrible, and this obviously means that like the craft beer revolution's run out of ideas. Like they can't do anything good or new. Like they have to brew some beer that nobody likes and is horrible. And I was like, well, one, you may have just had a bad one. Two, maybe you just lots of things in beer are acquired tastes. Not everyone's gonna like it the first time, or sometimes people may just never like a certain style of beer. But I don't know. To declare that craft beer was dead because she didn't like this one style.
She should listen to the podcast. Sounds like.
Yeah, it was a little much. Yeah, one of my all-time goals is to go to Leipzig, Germany, and drink a Gose at the House of Gose, Ohne Bedenken, without concern in Germany.
I was going to say, do you want to go? And then can we go to Goslar and go see the Gose River? Is there an active brewing facility in Goslar? Or
I don't think so. Oh,
okay.
You know what? I think there is, but what's really weird is that somebody opened it. I can't remember the name of that guy. Somebody did open a Gose brewing facility in Goslar, and they were trying to like be very true to the original Goslar Gose.
Yeah.
And it's not sour.
Oh,
yeah, and they claim that the original Gose wasn't.
Okay.
A lot of my information is from a book written by Fal Allen. He is the head brewer at Anderson Valley. He's fell in love with Gose as well, and fell in love with brewing the style and the history of the style. He wrote a book all on Gose. That's where I'm getting a lot of my information.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to think from his research and his historical, looking through the historical writings and stuff, he thinks it's very unlikely that it was not sour. Like,
gotcha.
Just mainly because of brewing techniques at the time.
Yeah, I know. When I was doing my research, well, a couple of cool things they said, and I don't know if this is true, but they think the salinity of Gose was because of the Gose River, like the water source they used.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, I don't know what time period or what era of Gose this was, but they said at certain points when it was made, like, they didn't even boil it. So,
right.
I don't know how it wouldn't be sour if you're not, you know what I mean? Like, these things are getting basically spontaneously fermented. So, yeah, I would imagine it to be sour, but.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, at the time, like, either you had a stronger beer, which was higher ABV that kept it from souring, or you had a beer that you drank very quickly. You didn't let ferment very long. Those are the only two reasons a beer wouldn't be sour.
Right.
Anything that was aged for any, or fermented for any longer period of time was going to be sour. So.
Okay, so are we adding this to the bucket list, our Germany trip? That'd be hard. There'd be a lot of places we have to go, but I guess this would be like the number one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem is I would, like, if you're going to go all that way, I feel like you should just do a lot of stuff, like Belgium.
Yeah.
That would be pretty cool, just to do Belgium and Germany and do kind of like a beer trip,
Yeah, that'd be really awesome. And see some of those historical places.
Yeah.
All right, add it to the bucket list, sir.
But yeah, definitely going to Leipzig, Germany.
Okay.
Drinking a Gose. That's like my ultimate goal one day.
All right, I'll go with you.
And like I said, at that point I won't so much as just die, but I will I will just send
You'll ascend into heaven.
into nirvana.
The gates will just open.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty nice.
Okay. I have another great quote from this book.
Okay.
This is from another writing. I'm not sure what year this was, but when asking a Gose drinker about his favorite drink, as you can see, his eyes light up. A well-matured Gose is for the expert, who explored and got to know the nuances in taste at length. Above everything, he calls it his Gotterdrink, God's drink. Tasty and thirst-quenching, seemingly sour but full-flavored, and at the same time stimulating digestion, this golden bright drink invites to cheerful pleasure.
Wow. That was a succinct summary of the style.
A little sour, a little salty, gives you diarrhea.
Sometimes gives you the poops.
Stimulates digestion.
Okay. I like that's a very
that's a little
careful and elegant way to phrase that. Yes, stimulates digestion without concern.
I should revamp that meme. You know, the pawn Moore's meme. You know, where it's like coffee. Like, yeah. I need some energy, and he goes, best I can do is a poop.
Yes.
I gotta revamp that to Gose. Like, I would like a beer.
Best I can do is
I'd like to get drunk. No, best I can do is a poop.
It's just a Gose bottle. Yes.
But I do have to report, I've never experienced.
I was gonna say I've never experienced that either, and I like you. I think Gose was one of my favorite styles. Yeah, and I've never really had an issue with it, but
yeah, I think beer drinking in general kind of like will upset my stomach, like if I drink a ton. But
yeah, I do know if you drink too many sours, the next day you'll have some issues.
Oh yeah, that's right. You can learn that.
And I can imagine maybe if you drank a lot of Gose, but I don't. You know, it's one of those beers you don't.
Maybe that was the problem with these German guys.
Yeah, they were like drinking a bunch. But it's not a beer to me that like. I want to sip it slowly, kind of enjoy it. It's not like something I want to drink a lot of in one night, but I don't
know. So a few notes about like the modern Gose.
Yeah. What has it evolved into?
Most important, like if you were drinking just straight like Leipzig style Gose,
yeah,
it's gonna be a little tart. It's gonna have a very like lemony floral aroma. No hop bitterness. Usually these beers hover around 5-6 IBUs, basically nothing. Very highly carbonated, light-bodied, highly attenuated, so very dry. And the flavor profile is going to be salty, kind of a floral, spicy coriander, a little lemony from the wheat. Very kind of sourdough bread, biscuity kind of bread flavor underlying all that, and a nice tartness to go with that. That's it. Like that is your Gose, and it is so good.
Just that description sounds amazing. Yeah.
If you can get...
Yeah, what would you recommend? Yeah.
If you can get Anderson Valley's Give Me the Ink and Holy Gose, perfect style.
That one's hard to find.
It is hard to find.
Because they make like a million variants of Gose, and I've only found that one, like the just unadulterated Gose once, but it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it is hard to find. Yeah. Even they have like a variety pack out now, but it's all variants. Nope. Yeah. They have the cherry, the rosé.
I think
the framboise rosé,
and the
briny melon, and the blood orange. The blood big ones. But yes, so the Give Me the Ink and the Holy Gose is great. Weldworks has their Leipzig style Gose.
Nice.
Yeah, called just Gose. It's amazing. That might be my all-time favorite, honestly. Reuben's is amazing. Reuben's Gose. Westbrook's Gose, I mentioned earlier in 2012. They kind of reintroduced the style to the United States. Distill Brewing in Illinois. They make one called Here Goes Nothing.
I like that.
That's their base Gose. It's kind of funny. I've had a few of their variants, like a watermelon variant and a pina colada variant. They're terrible.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, their base Gose is amazing.
Yeah.
But their variants are really terrible. So, Don't get anything weird. Just get the here goes a nothing. That's probably my most
Those are good
solid
suggestions.
list.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've seen a base Gose, like a non-fruited Gose, in a brewery
I don't
ever.
think so
Maybe
either. Yeah.
it's always some sort of
Twist on it. Yeah.
variation.
Margarita. Yeah. Lime.
Yeah, you're gonna see that a lot. In fact, like there's some like salt and lime Goses that are almost like Mexican lagers, but like a little bit sour. Kind of an interesting taste profile. You can almost drink them with Mexican food and almost be the same experience.
Yeah.
So that there are fruits that blend very well with the style, like watermelon, I think.
Yeah, I think melon and like lime, like if you try to do like a margarita, they go so well with the base flavors of Gose.
Also like passion fruit, guava. Those tend to be pretty good Gose adjuncts. But yeah, it's crazy that you can find them anywhere now. I've had a taco Gose. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember that?
No, was it good?
Yeah, Weldworks at the beer festival had the taco Gose. It had the little taquito sticking in it. Do you remember that?
Did we have it together?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I don't remember.
Yeah, it was weird.
It must have been late in the.
It was like a hot sauce Gose. It was very strange.
Did we like it?
Well, I mean, it was interesting, but it was like the problem is like it was so spicy. It was such a spicy beer. Like it was cool because it was like tomatoey and salsa. Like I actually had a tomato Gose.
Yeah, that would kind of work.
Yeah, like sort of Bloody Mary-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Salty tomato. Yeah, it's actually really good. This taco Gose was just too spicy.
Gotcha.
It's kind of weird to like drink something and it just not be like refreshing. Like you feel like you need to drink something else to cool your mouth down.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I've seen some like smoky Goses, oyster Goses. We talked about how oyster stouts.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a versatile style. I mean, there's a lot of flavors you can mix with it and still come out with something interesting. This is probably why everyone does so much crazy stuff with the style.
Yeah. The other interesting thing too is we've talked a little bit about like brewing methods of sours before. Val Allen goes over a lot of like different techniques in this book on like how different breweries sour their beers, and it's kind of interesting because you can literally like pitch yogurt into the wort to add souring bacteria. But there's so many different side effects of that, like because you're adding dairy.
Yeah.
You're adding there's not only going to be lactobacillus strains. You actually can't control like how much of what strains, because you don't. I mean, they list what strains are in the yogurt, but you don't know like in what percentage or how many of what. So like the flavor of your beer could be completely altered by a different strain of bacteria being more present than another. And so it's really interesting, like the Anderson Valley method. I mean, when I read through it, they lose me like halfway.
Okay.
Like I feel like it's so complicated. He says it's like simple, but I feel like it's so complicated. Like they like sour the wort with like tons of lactobacillus, like at huge amounts, and then they like mix strengths and they cool it, and they have to put like argon gas. They have to fill the tank with like the rest of the tank with argon gas so that oxygen doesn't get in. Like they very much protect it from oxygen.
Jeez.
So that no aerobic bacteria can proliferate.
Yeah.
So that's
complicated. We're not doing that in our garage.
Yeah, no, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
But what they're hell bent on doing is making sure that that one lactobacillus strain is the only thing that's souring the beer. So they don't get any off flavors.
Yes.
And yeah, the other thing too was like, so there's a lot of bacteria on the grain itself.
Okay.
And lots of different strains. So like where some brewery might like use that grain, use the strains of bacteria off the grain that just naturally sour the beer with those bacteria. But you don't have a lot of control over which bacteria is the most dominant. Whereas they get the wort off the grain as quickly as possible, and pitch it with so much lactobacillus that there's almost like no the lactobacillus strain that they want.
It's gonna dominate. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very interesting, the souring techniques that are used now, yogurt, probiotic drinks, and then just adding lactic acid. Fat Alan said that's like it's just not the same.
Okay.
So that's like that's kind of the weird landscape of sour beers in general right now. Is this sort of like, I don't know, you can ask just to find out how your sour beer is soured, because you might be like, this is weird, this doesn't taste right, and find out like, oh, it's just lactic acid added.
Interesting. And they say that's not as good, huh?
It just like doesn't taste as natural or right.
Makes sense.
And then there's breweries that just do a combination. If the bacteria that came off the grain didn't sour it enough, they'll just add lactic acid to sour it where they want to sour it.
Bump it up a little bit. Yeah.
The really interesting thing about Anderson Valley is that they use this English ale yeast to pitch after they've soured it and boiled it. But the pH is so low. Now this yeast like is able to ferment in that low pH, but it doesn't survive it.
Really?
It doesn't survive it to the point of them being able to capture yeast and reuse that strain again. So they literally have to they can't reuse yeast. They have to always have it available.
Wow.
They can't use it from one batch to the other.
Right.
Like a lot of breweries with a lot of yeast, they would just have their house cultures that they would just continually harvest off of each fermentation. So
they just sacrificed the yeast on the altar of that beer.
Hard on the yeast, yeah.
Dang, that's really cool.
So if you ever get a chance, this Gose book, we should give it a lot of credit. Gose book by Fallon Allen is awesome. It's Gose Brewing, a classic German beer for the modern era. It's actually funny. This is the first chapter is basically the history of the beer, but the remaining chapters are especially interesting for anyone who home brews, because it's just a lot about the science and how to brew and the different sort of chemical makeups of each of these different eras of Gose and what they would have been. And it's an interesting book especially for me as a Gose nerd. But even just the history of this beer is incredible, like how long it was and how many times it was saved, because we've had some other deep dives where it got saved once or twice, but this was 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, it was
if
saved
not
4 times. Yeah, which is crazy. Cool.
But that is a testament to how amazing this style is.
I know that so many people.
Someone is always passionate enough to be like, no, this cannot go away.
Steven, I feel like you're passionate enough about Gose that if we suddenly find ourselves, never let it die again. If we find ourselves in a post-apocalyptic future, you're gonna be setting up a brewery. You're I will reinvent Gose.
I got a beer. I got a beer that everyone's gonna like.
Nice. You'll be in the history books. It's the fifth savior of Gose.
Just need some salt and coriander and wheat.
All right. Well, do you think we've done justice to your favorite beer style?
I mean, I hope so. More than anything, I just hope that my passion for this beer style came through, because I do love it.
I think it did, and I know you love it, and I love it as well. It's not my favorite, but it's very close. It's probably my top 3.
I feel like any beer competition should just call me up. Be like, we have some beers you need to try, some Goses. I don't want to judge any other category.
You should be become the ultimate Gose judge. That's the only style you judge.
I think I could be.
You hyper specialize.
Yeah.
All right, start working on it.
Yeah, there's no way I could be a thorough judge on any other style, but that one, I can tell you when there's a good one or not.
We gotta get our certification. We should get one at least.
What did we call it?
It's not a sommelier. It's
the sommelier is wine.
It's got a name. I don't remember what it is.
We don't even know the name.
Yeah, we're a long ways off from being level 1. We don't even know what to Google.
Wait, it was oh man, we suck. Google. Who does Joe Rogan always ask for? Who's this guy he always asks for?
Jamie.
Jamie, can you pull that?
It's a cicerone.
Cicerone. Ah,
You need to become cicerones.
you're Italian. You should remember that.
And then you gotta ultra specialize in Gose. All right, that is the bucket list.
It's like a medical specialty. You know? After years and years of school, then I have to go on to the Gose specialty.
Yeah, you'll be level 4 cicerone with this hyper focus.
I'll be able to charge so much for my services.
I don't know about that, sir.
We're like, we're not sure. We're having a hard time deciding which one should get gold and which one should get silver.
Bring in
Steve.
All right. Well, if you need Steven to resolve your
if you're not sure if you like it goes there or not.
Yeah, your beer competition tiebreaker, you can contact us at contact.attenuation@gmail. We're also at Instagram.
Now that email's gonna be full.
Oh, it's gonna blow up, sir. We're also you can also reach us on Instagram at attenuation.podcast. So, yeah, and Steven will be posting interesting pictures, and I will occasionally post a picture.
I should have taken a picture of my watermelon Tajin beer.
You should have. I took a picture of my Goslar red, but I don't think it's Instagram worthy. So
yeah, that's the problem. I always like pour the beer on the podcast, and then I don't take a picture. So
yeah, and it's like this isn't a great setting. The lighting in here is not great, and maybe I'll post it anyways. I don't care.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's a wrap.
The people want to see what you're drinking.
They don't care if my photography is on point.
Mm-mm.
All right, cool. I'll post it then. Well, I think that is wrap on episode 25. My name is Jason, and I'm joined by my best friend since 8th grade, Steven.
That's me.
And we are saying cheers and adieu until next time of episode 26 of Attenuation, a beer podcast.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Attenuation, a beer podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Instagram or Facebook for more fun content. Catch you next week. Cheers!